boyfriend.
What do you know about working out?
Not a lot.
Okay, say. I know that it should be done.
Oh, yeah.
The constant battle of should versus does.
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, you have dance background, so you do know how to work out in that context. And then me, as a former skinny person who ran 3 miles a day every day, I know how to do...
That was such a crazy time.
It was. When I look back on it, it's wild.
I remember you would FaceTime me while you were running.
I know. I was so proud of myself.
Yeah. It was a great time for you. I'm happy that you did that.
I'm glad I had that
To look
18
back on.
months, 2 years. But I've never mastered any kind of group workout. I've never done anything where it's me and other people working out together.
Yeah, I don't like a group workout necessarily, but I had a roommate and she and I would work out like every day. And then there were times where we would do FaceTime workouts. Mm-hmm. That was fun. I liked that. Just the one-on-one, the paired, and knowing each other's limitations and...
We're wrong. We're both wrong. Because, well, you're not wrong, but we have worked out together.
Oh, yes.
You and I have worked out together.
Oh, my gosh.
Other people have worked out with us. And we were working out with people on a video. Okay. Well, good. I guess the natural next question is, do you know anything about Camp Gladiator?
I know that if somebody does Camp Gladiator, that they're going to have a sticker on the back of their car with the
really?
CG. The Camp Gladiator CG
That's
sticker.
what CG is.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, I've seen those too.
Yeah, so I think it's one of those things where you feel like you belong to a community, and so you want to proudly display that you're a part of this community.
Camp Gladiator Pride.
Yeah.
Yeah, you take pride in the fact that you're a part of something that's meaningful to you.
Yes.
You know, we actually know people who do Camp Gladiator.
Yes.
And I think that Megan used to be a Camp Gladiator coach. And she would get up really early in the morning to teach classes. Mm-hmm. And I remember one day she was like, you should come to one. And I was like, I should.
I should, but will
Period.
I?
Yeah, I should. I'm not going to. Well, today's story, the one I have for you, touches on Camp Gladiator. And fitness plays kind of a pivotal role in this murder.
Is this where I find out that it's safer to not work out?
That's always the assumption. And today's case might just prove that it's true.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
It at least proves that you shouldn't be a teacher.
Oh.
In the spring of 2016, a brutal murder would rock the small city of Midlothian, Texas. Situated roughly 25 miles southwest of Dallas and bordering the city's... I feel like you're glaring at me.
No, I'm thinking, because I used
Okay.
to trek back and forth every other weekend to the Dallas area from Houston.
Oh, okay. Well, then I have some more information that might help you.
Let's go.
So Midlothian is 25 miles southwest of Dallas, and it borders 3 other cities, including Cedar Hill, Grand Prairie, and Waxahachie. And I know that city is not pronounced Waxahachie. Waxahachie. No, Cameron, really, what is the pronunciation?
It's Waxahachie.
Okay, Waxahachie. Good. Now, all of these smaller cities connected to each other were pretty much considered to all be safe communities, far removed from the kind of hustle and bustle and troubles of their larger counterparts in the DFW Metroplex.
We've been over this before.
Nothing is safe.
No.
I also think it's really important to kind of contextualize that back in 2016, the population of Midlothian was 28,000 people. And now, 2024, the population has swelled to 43,000.
Okay.
So the city has nearly doubled in size since 2016.
Well, is it just because Dallas is expanding?
I assume it's because of what you're saying. It's in the vicinity of DFW, but that still is such a remarkable number to me. The projection is that it's grown by 22% each year.
Yeah, that's
so wild to me.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. In less than a decade.
Yeah, 8 years. Missy Bevers was a devoted mother and wife.
So I, like I said, would go to and from basically north of Denton from Houston, essentially Katy, every other weekend for a period in my life.
The golden era.
And when my ex and I would be driving, we would pass a billboard all the time that was about Missy Bevers and do you know any information? So I am aware of this case.
Wow. I'm actually going to talk about that billboard later.
Oh, well, spoilers.
I've never seen the billboard in question, but I don't think there's any reason I would have. I used to travel up I-35 and I would pass by Waxahachie on my way to Arkansas.
Yeah.
And I stopped doing that in 2014. Back to Missy Bevers.
Yeah.
Missy Bevers was, again, a devoted mother and wife. She deeply cherished her family, and in return, they deeply cherished her. She married Brandon Bevers on June 18th, 1998, in Jacksboro, Texas. Jacksboro? Jacksboro. Jacksboro.
Jacksboro.
Jacksboro.
No, I would say Jacksboro, but...
Do you think that's how people say it in East Texas?
Nah.
No, they say Jacksboro.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I have family over there. They for sure are
They say
saying
Jacksboro. Jacksboro. We are not diminishing East Texas people.
No.
We love the dialect. I'm personally a big fan.
It's one of the few areas that the Texas twang accent is still alive because
Yes.
that is rapidly diminishing.
And authentic. Known for her beauty, her spontaneity, and her fun-loving nature, Missy was really the heart and soul of her family. Her 3 children have all talked about her in great deal in different forums. For instance, one of her daughters has spoken about her on a podcast. Obviously, Missy Bevers' 3 children miss her profoundly. Allie, her middle daughter, has spoken about aspiring to be just like her mother, which I think is a testament to how good of a person Missy Bevers was. And I think another way to contextualize what kind of person Missy Bevers is that her youngest daughter, Sarah, talks about being so attached to her mother that she would refuse to go to school. She just wanted to be with her mom. Although her mother didn't always placate her, there were times when she said, okay, Sarah, you can stay with me. And she would go with Missy to go lead a Camp Gladiator class or go do errands with her. My mother would never.
Let you stay home from school to be with her?
Correct. She would let me stay home, but not to be with her.
Attendance was very important for my mom. Perfect attendance, I pretty much had always.
Absolutely not.
Always.
I never got perfect attendance, and I never will.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't surprise anybody.
Okay. In the Midlothian area, Missy was an esteemed fitness trainer. She was renowned for her energy and dedication, and she had a really large following of clients through her work at Camp Gladiator. One of her close friends, Renee Jones, said that Missy had this really incredible ability to push everyone to be better, but that she did it in a way that was fun and empowering. Missy helped people realize their dreams, and in doing so, she lived out her own dream of being a motivational fitness instructor. Her impact on the people around her was so profound and has left such a legacy in her community that people really remember and revere her. On April 18th, 2016, Missy Bevers woke up at 3 a.m. ready to start her day. Now, this was her typical wake-up time because she was a Camp Gladiator instructor and she often taught a 5 a.m. class.
And she woke up at what time?
3 a.m.
Okay.
I know, that's dedication. She was waking up at 3 a.m. to go teach a class on fitness.
I don't think it needs to be said, but it would never be me.
Never could be me. I only went to sleep 2.5 hours before that wake-up time.
I could do the getting up at 3.
No.
I don't want to, but I could do the getting up at 3. My sleep schedule would just adjust and I would go to sleep earlier.
Missy had an early fitness class to teach at Creekside Church, which is a Church of Christ community just 10 miles from her home. And from what I understand, her and her husband Brandon and their 3 daughters also all attended this church.
I guess that makes sense. I mean, you would probably, if you were looking for a location to hold Camp Gladiator, you would probably go to your church as a member of the church rather than going to a different church that you weren't a member of.
Yeah. And this is an aside, but I remember at one point in time, my old home church had this kind of fitness for God thing going on. Mm-hmm. And I think that's wonderful. But I also remember thinking, I don't know if I need this to be my theme for exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just seemed kind of like a weird place.
I see what they were doing.
A weird avenue.
I understand the effort.
Can you help me understand it?
Yes, they wanted to provide a fitness space for people to improve their health, but
so that they could honor God.
Well, yeah.
That makes sense. Not to me.
No.
So this destination was only 10 miles from her home, and Missy was known for arriving early to set up for her classes. And those classes typically had 12 to 15 participants. On this morning, the weather had been really uncooperative. It had been raining throughout the night. It was still raining when Missy got out onto the road.
What? Okay, she got there early to set up to teach, as we know is required. But what time did she get there?
Missy arrived at the church precisely at 4:18 a.m.
4:18 on 4:18?
Yes. So again, on this particular morning,
4:18.
Yes,
April 18th.
On 4/18, on April 18th.
It's my dad's birthday.
Oh, that's why it's important. Missy already knew that their class was going to have to be moved indoors, which most Camp Gladiator classes happen in parking lots, areas like that. They're usually always outside. And Creekside Church had this kind of main entrance with an awning, which would have permitted them to do their exercise under the awning.
Yeah.
But I think the weather was so severe that they needed to move it inside the building.
Okay. Question. How do we know that she got there at 4:18? Was it her GPS? Was there security footage?
There's security footage.
Okay.
While I can't say specifically, I know the exact method in which they determined her arrival time. I know that authorities know exactly the time she got there, and it was 4:18 a.m.
Okay.
There is security footage, but not necessarily for outside of the building.
So 4:18 is when she got there or when she entered the building?
4:18 is when she arrived at the church.
Okay.
So again, Creekside Church had multiple entrances into their building. And this is a pretty sizable church. It's not necessarily vertically sizable, but it has a large footprint.
That tracks 100% large church because East Texas is known for churches.
Yes, yeah, for sure. This church is really surrounded by open space. Mm-hmm. It's technically in Midlothian, but it's off the highway. And there is a couple of storefronts down from it, like a mile and a half. But the church is really on its own, and there are some woods behind it, but very sparse woods.
Okay.
By 5 a.m., the start time for the class, the attendees had walked into the church, only to be met with a horrifying sight. Missy Bevers lay dead and bloodied, a gruesome scene that would haunt them forever. I want to clarify that there are some different sources that report on this part of the case differently. Mm-hmm. Some sources indicate that Missy Bevers was discovered by a group of class patrons.
Okay.
Other sources indicate that there was only one person who discovered her body.
Do they say who that person is, or do some say one and some say...
That person has not been identified in anything that I've seen.
Okay.
And so, and for full disclosure, I watched a docuseries episode on this case. I read a few articles from local news outlets that covered it, as well as the Dallas Observer. And ultimately, what makes the most sense to me is that multiple people found her because I think that they were all waiting for her to come start the class.
Yeah, I was wondering why they would, or how they knew to enter the building. Like, was there a communication system that she sent out, hey, class is going to be inside today? Or did they show up, know the weather was bad, see that she wasn't under the awning, and know that they were probably going to be inside. I mean, they saw her car.
Yeah. And I'm going to get to that in just a bit.
Okay. This case, because of the billboard that I would drive past, and I haven't driven past it in over 3 years. Actually, I have, because my sister lives up in Dallas, or north of Dallas. So I have seen this billboard more recently, but this case is not solved, right?
No.
Okay.
Spoiler alert.
Well, then I imagine that that's, if it was her body discovered by one person, I imagine that not revealing the identity of that person would be because the case is still open.
Right. And we're going to talk about that more in a little bit too.
Cool.
So that same morning, the Midlothian Police Department made a statement and issued that officers had responded to a call at Creekside Church, and upon arrival, Missy Bevers was found unresponsive and was pronounced dead at the scene.
I can't imagine walking into a church and, like, that's the least of your concerns walking into a church.
Right.
Thinking that you're going to discover a horrifying crime scene and your instructor murdered.
Yeah, churches are supposed to be safe havens. They're the place where people are supposed to feel the most comfortable, the most safe, the most secure. And in this instance, we've taken an institution that's known for security and comfort and made it a killing ground.
Well, and I think that that is done sometimes symbolically. But I don't know enough about this case, but I feel like there's either symbolic or somebody knew where she was going to be when she was going to be there by herself.
There are elements of this case where symbolism is so strong that it's hard to imagine that it's not all connected.
Okay.
But by the same token, who would go to the lengths to commit a murder in the way that makes all of these pieces fit together? It almost feels like you're sitting down to a puzzle that has more pieces than what you need to complete the picture. And trying to figure out what to disclude and include, I think, is really difficult.
Yeah. I think that that's pretty common with open cases in general. You don't know what does matter and what doesn't matter until the case is solved.
Right. Chief Carl Smith of the Midlothian Police Department held this press conference again that very day. And one of the things that they also reported after talking about how they found Missy Bevers unresponsive and declared dead is that there was shattered glass strewn across the area. So they didn't necessarily release a whole lot of details, but for some reason they included that. I just thought that was interesting.
If there was shattered glass, do we know what the glass was from? A window, a door, a statue?
No.
Figurine? I just imagined that if there's shattered glass and it was something at the scene that was broken or shattered that left the remnants, that would come out because there was something that was there that either was boarded up or needed to be repaired, or there was something that was there that was no longer there, and people would notice either way.
You've seen the footage for the Missy Bevers case, the extended footage of the perpetrator in the church.
Yes.
Okay, so it's hard to say based off that footage if there was a lot of vandalism occurring, but it is believed that to a level glass was shattered in an attempt to kind of draw away from the idea that it was intended to be a murder.
Oh, yeah.
But again, we'll get further into that.
Kind of like how Stephanie Lazarus stacked up electronics.
Right. That's the same vein of what authorities believe happens here, what investigators believe, but again, they don't know. It's another piece that they can't decide to include or exclude. Sources close to the case revealed to Stacey Newman, who's a former HLN producer, that Missy's body, again, was discovered by her class attendees, so one of the instances where it says multiple people, lying on the floor in plain view. Officers ended up conducting a thorough search of the church, hoping to still find the perpetrator on the premises, but that search ended up being in vain. The reason they thought they might find the perpetrator is that it was literally thought to only be a matter of minutes between Missy's death to her class goers finding her. And then right at 5 a.m., they made the phone call that Missy Bevers was found in that condition. And within 10 minutes, emergency services was there.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say that if it's a 5 a.m. class, I'm not showing up at 5 or after. I'm showing up before. So she got there. I know.
We know those are the people that are dedicated. They are not. If you are going to a 5 a.m. workout class, you are ready to go. You've made a commitment
Well, and you probably also just have a busy schedule. You've got work that you're going to, and then you probably have kids, and you probably have after school things that you're taking people to and from, and then dinner and...
You don't have time to mess around.
Or also, I know...
Your schedule's also probably just really structured if you're able to make that time work.
I would be more likely to go at 5 a.m. than after work, because after work I am wearing the whole day and I feel weighted down by it, and I'm going to almost every single time make the decision to go past the gym, go past the Camp Gladiator site. I'm going home.
And see, I'm the opposite. I could never do it early in the morning because I would be like, oh my God, I can't start my day like this.
Okay, so she gets there at 4:18. Not enters the building, but arrives at the church.
She arrives at the church at 4:18 a.m.
Right. Let me walk through this.
Okay.
So I imagine that she probably goes to the awning area first just to see if there is any chance that this is going to work. And then she makes the decision to go into the church itself. So let's give her, 5 minutes to do all of that. So now we're at 4:23. And then let's assume that the first person arrives for Camp Gladiator 10 minutes before. So that's 4:50. So now we're already only working with less than 30 minutes from her entering the building to this person staging a vandalism, committing this murder, and fleeing the scene without being seen. And I assume they left on foot.
There's a lot of Reddit speculation about how this suspect got away.
Okay.
We're going to get to it.
Yeah, I know. We're like kind of jumping all over just because I have heard of this case and I have some knowledge of it, but I don't remember the details. It's been probably 5 years since
Don't worry, I'm going to give you a rundown.
Oh, good.
You're going to get it. So again, this search ends up being in vain. They do not find the suspect. He or she is gone. Missy's husband, Brandon, was informed that the suspect had entered through the back door of the church. Curiously, the outdoor security cameras were either not running or failed to capture footage of the entrance of the suspect into the building. So...
But not the exit?
There is no outside footage for this time period. And I don't know if the church was doing something with the security footage, but I do know that one of the professional homicide detectives that speaks on this case talks about how the suspect seemed to have a knowledge of the church. They seem to have an understanding of camera placement and when things may or may not be working.
So when I was in high school, which was a minute ago, my car was broken into. Actually, it was on April 18th because it was my dad's birthday, because one of the things that was stolen from my car was his birthday present. So that's crazy. But our footage at the school, and I know that this is not just back in the old times when I was in high school, but I know that there are other similar cases that have had this where the security footage doesn't pick up people, it picks up vehicles. And so because it was a person moving from car to car in my school's parking lot, because I wasn't the only car that they took from, they couldn't find the footage of them doing it on video because they were an individual moving and not a vehicle moving. So I'm wondering if the exterior security cameras were triggered by motion of a vehicle that is bigger than a human.
Well, first off, that's interesting. I didn't know that they could be set up that way.
Yeah, actually, my home security, I can set it to where when I'm away, even though the dogs are still inside moving around, it doesn't pick up them because it doesn't pick up anything that weighs less than 40 pounds.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so it's, I guess, just the level of sensitivity of the sensor and when it registers.
Wow, I didn't know that. The only thing I'm curious about is I don't think, from the way that it's reported in Crimes, Lies, and Video, is that there is no outside video footage. Even when Missy Bevers pulls up in her SUV, that's not caught on camera either.
But she pulled up to the front.
Right.
With this person.
But we're talking about like
360 coverage of the
right.
church.
Cameras all around the exterior. but they weren't working.
Could've
But I don't know. I don't know.
It could have been storm related too.
Absolutely. Now, fortunately, motion activated cameras inside the church did record the presence of the individual, who was dressed in black from head to toe. The person was wearing outdated SWAT tactical gear, including a padded vest that was labeled police in all capital letters in white, a black riot gear helmet, black boots, and black gloves. And in their hand, and I can't tell exactly what it is, and there is some back and forth conversation about what the item actually is. It doesn't seem that there is a determined or confirmed item in the hand. It looks like it could be a crowbar of some sort, but most believe it's kind of a lightweight hammer.
Lightweight specifically?
Like that the handle is lightweight. I don't know how they know that. I don't know how they made that determination, but that's exactly how it's described. Not just a hammer, but a lightweight handled hammer.
I wonder if that has to do with how casually they were carrying it, or the way that it was being wielded in the video, that you would be able to determine the weight of it.
Right. I feel like it should be easier to distinguish between a hammer and a crowbar. And so I also find it confusing that some sources refer to it as a crowbar and others refer to it as a hammer. But I can understand why someone would think it would be a crowbar, because in the footage, you can see where the suspect like pretends to try to break into a room with the device, but it doesn't actually look like they're putting a lot of effort into it. Everything seems really lackadaisical. Again, kind of going back to the idea that there is potential that the suspect was faking a burglary.
Oh, yeah. Just like trying to leave marks places, but not actually trying to access.
Yeah, trying to just make it seem like a burglary gone wrong versus a premeditated murder. Authorities quickly identified this individual in the video as the prime suspect in Missy Bevers' murder, which no shit.
Yeah, outdated police SWAT wear or whatever, running around just like tinkering with door frames.
When they felt like they had to say that, I was like, yeah, who the fuck else?
Yeah.
Who else? The footage that is available, I feel like it's really haunting. It looks like something that someone made for a cheesy horror film, but it's real.
You know, you asked me to review the footage, and I guess in a similar vein, one of the things I noticed was, and this is something that when I saw it, it triggered the memory to me, but the gait of the person is interesting. But then there's also a point where they look like, and the best way that I could describe it is a cartoon burglar trying to sneak around. Like the weird lifting the legs high, almost horse-like in the way that they were moving at one point.
It wasn't normal movement. And not only that,
it wasn't consistently abnormal either, though. So it definitely seemed put on. Again, to the staging of this. It seemed like they were intentionally trying to throw someone off their trail, which I think is what murderers do.
Well, and there's also a lot to still be discussed with the gate. But one of the things that strikes me is that it seems like nothing they're doing has any purpose. This suspect enters into the building, kind of casually looks into some windows. Others, he just passes by. And I mean windows into doors. At times, the suspect, like I said, almost like pretends to try to open a door, but you can see not a lot of effort goes into it. And then they go to this split level door. They open the bottom and they're like, oh. And then they open the top part. And then they enter into another room. And you see them turn into a corner that has no space of anywhere to go, but they like go into the corner. And then they make a left. And then they come back down the hallway. And it seems like there's no real rhyme or reason to what they're doing. It doesn't seem like someone who's scoping out potential burglary items. It doesn't seem like someone who's actually trying to understand the space.
I think that we can already agree that that is not what was going on. This is a staged burglary gone wrong situation. My question is, speaking of times, was there a timestamp on the footage? And if there was, have they been able to determine whether or not all of this walking around faking the burglary, was that done before or after the murder?
Let me get to that afterwards.
Okay.
I'll get to that a little later. The black-clad figure paces back and forth through a long hallway within the church, moving from room to room, but never entering. John Bueller, who is a retired homicide detective, suggested that the footage really indicated that the suspect was intimately familiar with the church's layout and had some kind of routine with the building.
So why did they turn into a corner that was a dead end?
I mean, my question is, why would anyone do that? Because if you walk through a door and you see that you're greeted by a wall or a hall, why would you not immediately make a left into the hallway?
Yeah.
The suspect did seem to know that the cameras were there, that they had an awareness, but there was no care. They didn't care. By most accounts of people who are familiar with the case and have been a part of it, one of the things that and I think it's kind of common sense.
Why would you say that they don't care? They've taken so much precaution. They took precaution to dress in a way that they wouldn't be identifiable. They've manipulated their gait, and they are doing some of this intentionally to stage or to throw off the track. So I think that they do care.
I don't think that the prevailing theory is that the gate is put on.
I saw 3 different gates.
So we're going to get to the expert.
Yeah.
But they do not think that the gate is put on. They do not think that it's falsified. They don't think that it's an attempt to cover their true identity. And when
Are you implying I'm not an expert?
You're an expert in a lot of things.
No.
And also the connotation of where they talk about, or when they're talking about how the suspect doesn't care that the cameras are there, it's in the vein of what you just said of they don't care where the cameras are because they know that they're disguised. They know that they are covered from head to toe in gear that keeps them from being seen. The idea is they're aware that the cameras are there.
Yeah, they cared enough about the cameras being there to put on the garb.
Correct.
But that to me is...
They don't care about the camera seeing them.
Yeah, because they've taken the
Correct.
steps. Right.
What security camera footage can confirm is that the suspect arrived at 3:50 a.m., roughly 26 minutes before Missy. The likely perpetrator forced their way into the building and was already inside when Missy arrived to set up for her class. Missy's class again was scheduled to start at 5 a.m. Emergency responders were there by 5:10 a.m. And although there is no surveillance video of the actual murder, which again, how would you know where to kill someone to actually do the deed and not be seen by a camera unless you had some kind of knowledge? Like, is that just happenstance? Did you just get lucky to kill Missy Bevers in a room without cameras?
Was Missy ever seen on camera?
Yes.
Okay.
That footage has never been released.
Right.
It's kind of a point of contention between the public and Midlothian Police Department. None of the footage that includes Missy has been released.
Well, I think that that makes sense because there's probably a way in which this person, whether they were a familiar voice and they called out to her or they approached her and she recognized them.
They did verbally confirm that there is footage of Missy seeing the person in tactical gear. Like, she develops an awareness that someone is there.
I've been in a silent school when it was dark outside where there's nobody else there. You would hear somebody else, even because it's so silent that just the sounds that you're making walking around are
terrifying.
A little bit, yeah.
They are
it's scary.
Being in an empty school at night, terrifying. Now, additional footage, again, was captured and has never been released to the public, and the Midlothian Police Department or any of its other cooperating investigators have shared why this footage is unreleased. Now, of course, we know that in these instances, these authorities, these investigators typically hold some evidence back so that they're able to discredit false confessions, or sometimes perpetrators confess without realizing it by sharing information that hasn't been released. We can assume that it's related to that, but it is a bit of a frustration point. What's odd is that there are skeptics who argue that no actual additional footage exists. I think that's really, I don't know what kind of conspiratorial.
Yeah. Conspiracy theory.
And so,
well, if you're not going to show me, then it's probably not real. Okay, bye.
Okay.
That doesn't make it less real.
Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. That's why we have wind. Dr. Michael Nuremberg, who is actually the forensic podiatrist who was called in to work on this case, has confirmed that he has reviewed the additional security footage. He was not allowed to discuss what he sees in the security footage, but he did say that it did show Missy within the church and offered insights into the moments leading up to her murder.
You know, even the extended footage that I watched, if there is footage of Missy encountering this person and becoming aware of their presence, there's probably also more footage of this person who a forensic podiatrist has probably
Analyzed.
seen. Yeah.
You know, it was almost kind of surreal to hear the podiatrist share what he did, because in it, he describes the footage of Missy's final moments before you can no longer see her as a horror movie in which he was essentially wishing, go the other way, do anything else.
I feel like that, I mean, they've got TV shows based on that. See No Evil, where you're watching and you know that it's this person's final moment or the last time that they're ever seen on camera, and you're like, no, make the different choice. I mean,
well, and it's really odd because as media consumers, we intake things like horror films and slashers. You don't. Sure, I do. I like horror movies, and I've always been able to separate truth from, not always, but I am able to separate truth from fiction. And I think that's especially true for people like Andrew, who don't ever want to watch true crime documentaries because it's real, and people who are okay with watching anything just because it's fictitious. And in this instance, there is no everything is all right. This isn't real. Missy Bevers ends up walking to her death. And I think that watching that footage is probably
harrowing.
Yes, gut-wrenching, nauseating. Retired homicide detective John Bueller really offered a lot of additional insight as to why authorities keep details of crimes under wraps. And I want to contextualize for listeners a little bit further that withholding that specific information is really important during active investigations, because what it allows investigators to do is to ask targeted questions that only a perpetrator would be able to answer truthfully and correctly.
Yeah, someone with intimate knowledge of the actual crime itself, not just the circumstances surrounding it.
Exactly. And again, it helps to minimize false confessions. It also minimizes misinformation that hurts the public. So one of the things that we see with the Missy Bevers case is that there are people that just have wild conjecture about who is responsible for Missy Bevers' murder, and they have nothing to do with it. But because a little bit of evidence leaked or made its way out, even after being discredited, is still looked at as part of Missy Bevers' actual story. And it's not. Or at least it isn't believed to be. I have a hard time saying it's not for sure, but it isn't believed to be important. It also allows the authorities to retain the element of surprise. It also protects witnesses. And again, it narrows down suspects by finding one who may know too much that hasn't been released. Dr. William Maroney, a medical examiner and forensic pathologist, provided further details on the nature of Missy's injuries. And according to Dr. Maroney, Missy died from puncture wounds to the head and chest. The hammer, seen in the suspect's hand, was likely the weapon used to inflict these wounds. When we talk about killing somebody with a hammer, we're typically talking about a signification of emotional motive, delivering blows with the force of 40 to 45 miles per hour.
Rage,
anger, jealousy, any number of really strong emotions. From his perspective, the head wounds probably knocked Missy unconscious, and it was the additional trauma to her body, including her chest, that proved fatal.
There are so many parallels that I'm seeing between Missy Bevers and Sherry Rasmussen's murders. The staging of the burglary, the incapacitating.
The staging of the burglary isn't as obvious in this case, but that is the prevailing theory. But I don't think it's quite as... When you explained Sherry Rasmussen's case, I was like...
This is not really...
No one burgled shit! But they also don't burgle anything in Missy Bevers' case. According to the church, not a single thing was taken. Missy's jewelry, her gun, her purse, her other personal items, her iPad, her phone, nothing. And of course, I say nothing of value. We know in the case of Sherry Rasmussen, the only thing of value, well, a few things of value were taken: purse, car, and you wouldn't think marriage certificate, but after knowing it was Stephanie Lazarus, it makes sense. But here, there is no item that's not accounted for.
The incapacitating with blows to the head, the presumed safeness of the space, right? Your home or your church, thinking that you're alone when you're not. There are just a lot. And then the fact that Sherry Rasmussen was murdered in February of 1986, and that crime was not solved until 2009. And this was 2016, and it has yet to be solved. I'm hoping it doesn't take the same amount of time. I'm hoping it's not 20 plus years. Also, I guess the fact that they're dressed in police garb and Sherry was killed by a police officer. Anyway, there are just quite a few parallels that are...
Some are striking.
Yes.
As our resident forensic psychology expert,
you need to chill with that.
I would really like you to kind of walk us through.
I have an unused master's degree in psychology with a forensics concentration. Let's be clear about that. That I finished in June 2020.
So, as someone who has both an undergraduate degree in English and linguistics.
My major is English, my minor linguistics.
And someone who has a master's degree in psychology with an emphasis in forensics. How does a hammer signify emotional motive?
Well, like you said, you've got to be very intentional, and you've got to have you're packing a lot of emotion into the use of something because it's personal. You have to be close to somebody to hit them with a hammer, and you have to really, really want to cause harm or death to hit them in the head with a hammer repeatedly.
With that strength, with that level of fervor. I think one of the most interesting things that I read as I was doing this research in terms of after Dr. Maroney talks about the emotional significance of using a hammer as a murder weapon, I felt inclined to kind of do a little more research. And exactly what you said is the dominating reason why someone would use a hammer in murder.
It's also hard to trace because hammers are commonplace. There's probably one in every household, if not more.
Right.
It is a convenient thing to grab, right? Like a bullet is going to have markings that are going to indicate what type of, again, like when
gun
Sherry
ballistics
was shot, they were able to determine that it was with a specific revolver. And so
I thought the most interesting idea is that hammers are symbolic of destruction. And so this use of a hammer as a destructive tool, you know, I don't know if that's the literary mind in me, the psychology, social work background, but using a tool that signifies both creation and destruction, like how...
Creation, because I think if we were going to choose, and then we're talking about Mary Vincent, where a sledgehammer was used. Sledgehammers are destruction.
Correct. That's their only purpose. But when we think about a regular, typical hammer...
No, I can get there with you. Destructive and rebuilding. Like, if this is something symbolic for the perpetrator, then they are rebuilding something within them that felt that they really had to, for their own personal reasons, murder Missy.
Yeah. It's an interesting weapon to use. And I think it's because...
To me, it is such a gruesome...
It is.
...weapon to... I mean, that is... Again, that goes back to personal. That is personal.
Is a sickening method. There is... The choices or the feelings behind the choice of using a hammer are varied. And I don't think in this instance that it was just a tool of convenience. I guess that's what I'm getting at. Shortly after the crime, Brandon Bevers, Missy's husband, was brought in for questioning.
Naturally.
What's interesting is that before investigators asked Brandon Bevers any questions, they showed him the security video. And I thought it was really odd in the docuseries that I watched. Brandon Beavers recounts his initial reaction of that's fake or outdated tactical gear that's worn by the suspect. And so he sees this footage right away.
What does he do?
I'm not sure what his profession is.
So was that told to him, or did he know?
He knew that.
Okay.
He talks about how his natural and immediate response was that that's not real or modern tactical gear.
Is it because more modern tactical gear is not as bulky? Because wasn't that one of the features that you...
The vest was incredibly padded, but as far as the tactical part, and let me be really frank with you, I don't know what tactical gear is supposed to look like or all of the functions it's supposed to perform, but I do understand that this was not current tactical gear. And Brandon Beavers didn't think it was genuine tactical gear. Like, he knew something was off.
You said that Missy Bevers' gun was not taken. Mm-hmm. So she had a concealed carry license?
I don't know anything about whether or not she had a license to carry a gun, but she kept it in one of the consoles of her car.
It just seems to me that, I mean, of course this is somebody who knows her, but this is somebody who knows her, because I also think that wearing tactical gear, while it disguises your body in a way that you can't tell if this person is male or female. They've taken so many steps to disguise it, but there are other things you can wear that would create the same effect without being as heavy as I would assume the tactical gear would be. So I think that there is also an awareness that she had a gun.
Right.
That she had a gun that she kept with her, and that would potentially be something that they would encounter if they approached her and it didn't go initially the way that they were hoping that it would go. That she would maybe pull a gun on them and shoot, but if Missy had enough time to process the situation and determine that there was a threat and had the gun on her, like, they thought through this.
Yeah, and that it would be disarming, right? If you have a tactical gear on and it says police.
But it says police on the back.
Does it not say it on the front as well?
I didn't see it on the front because I kept watching the footage because I was like, does that say police on there?
Uh-huh.
And I kept waiting for them to turn around and to get a clearer image. And then eventually when they come and they turn a corner into the hallway, you see very clearly police.
Mm-hmm. Okay. There was initial speculation that the suspect could be connected to law enforcement, given the tactical gear. However, retired homicide detective John Bueller clarified that the gear appeared to be vintage SWAT gear. And I did not know this, but evidently vintage SWAT gear is easily accessible on the internet. He speculates that this gear was likely intended to startle and confuse Missy Bevers rather than to provide a genuine tactical advantage. The element of surprise could have given the suspect the crucial moments needed to carry out the attack. Bueller states that such a time pocket allowed for the victim, Missy Bevers, to be taken by surprise and also allows the perpetrator, and I hate this, to maximize their attack. When moving back to the suspect, one of the comments, and this is verbatim, is that the walk is unusually sway-y for a man. And at one point, the suspect adopts a stance that a lot of people interpret as feminine. However, these observations, again, are just purely speculative and lack any concrete scientific backing. There is a moment in the footage where the suspect stands for a moment, and their heels are almost aligned, and both feet are pointing outwards.
Like a dancer?
Yeah, exactly like that. And I feel like they're making speculative leaps about the gender based on these few postures and standing patterns that I found really unhelpful. Now,
well, I want to know, and we won't know, not unless this is solved and the other footage is released, but I want to know if there is a moment in the footage that the police have that is not released where they have Missy and the suspect in close enough proximity to maybe determine height, stature, any of that information in comparison to Missy, because that information we have is definitive. And so it would also help lend credence either way, whether is this female or is this not female.
Right. That brings me to my next piece of information, which is there is no professional involved in this case who can definitively state whether or not the suspect is male or female. They also can't definitively say what the height of the suspect is. Now, assumably, or what they've assumed, is that the height of the suspect is around 5'8", with a margin of error of 1.53 inches. However, other reports suggest a height range from 5'2" to 5'7". The suspect's posture has led to a lot of interpretations, with some seeing the figure, and this is a quote, "a sad, semi-fat man," while others notice hip movements that could be perceived as feminine.
A sad, semi-fat man? What in the what?
I'm just telling you what the experts said in the documentary. A sad, semi-fat man. I don't know what makes him sad.
I don't know what makes him semi-fat. What is that?
Do you think they just meant overweight?
Slumped shoulders, hunched. What you were saying, that they can't determine the gender of the perpetrator. I also think that in using a hammer, you're less likely to leave your own DNA behind, because we know in attacks where somebody uses a knife that there's very often, once blood's on your hands and on the knife, the hand slips, and very, very often the perpetrators also cut themselves, leaving their own DNA at the scene.
Well, and again, the suspect was wearing gloves.
Yeah, the suspect took precaution to make sure that they were not caught.
Yeah, every part of their personhood was covered in material.
And they were staging things and maybe changing their gait. When I was watching it, it wasn't to me that the gait was feminine or whatever that means, but it felt put on. It felt like at some points like there was a limp. It felt, like I said, a cartoon bank robber. And then there was a time where they were walking in the hall that the gait, there was nothing about it that was remarkable or unique. And then a few moments later, it seemed that there was something unique about the way that they walked. So it all just felt very put on.
The forensic podiatrist.
Yeah, the actual expert, not me. We get it.
Dr. Nuremberg seemingly believes that the gait is consistent with someone who suffered an injury to either their hip, ankle, or knee on the right side of their body. That's it is the most significant piece of evidence that the Midlothian Police Department has and has also shared. I don't know if they have more significant information locked away, kept tight, but that's a lot of what they go off of, is what the forensic podiatrist has been able to share.
How long was she a Camp Gladiator instructor?
Not sure.
I'm curious if there was anybody who was attending Camp Gladiator that seriously injured themselves, knee, hip, ankle.
I also want to point out, because I know that we've almost kind of altogether decided that there is not a chance this was a burglary gone wrong. I do want to point out that the Midlothian Police Department still holds that to be a possibility.
That it was a burglary gone
Yes. There is still this conversation around, was it a premeditated murder or was it a crime of opportunity? And that's a question they still grapple with. Again, notably, nothing was stolen from Missy or the church. Her wedding ring, phone, jewelry, truck, iPad, phone, all of those things were still left untouched at the scene.
And the forensic pathologist could not determine if there was a hammer or a crowbar used?
Not that I've seen. I think they do, and I think I talk about this later in my case. I think that the medical examiner knows exactly what weapon was used to kill Missy Bevers, but they refuse to say what it was.
If it's a crowbar, I could maybe be swayed into believing that this is crime of opportunity.
Mm-hmm. When you watched the footage, could you tell if you thought it was a crowbar or a hammer?
No, but I wasn't paying that much attention to that. I was watching cartoon bank robbery take place.
Yeah.
But if it was a crowbar, then maybe this was just burglary gone wrong. I could be swayed. If it was a hammer, less convinced.
It seems altogether unlikely that this wasn't about Missy Bevers' murder. But I just wanted to clarify that authorities still consider both options. So back to your question about Missy and her time as a Camp Gladiator instructor. Like many fitness professionals, Missy frequently posted about her workouts, their locations, their times on social media. So it was really easy to keep tabs on Missy Bevers and where she was on any given day. And she did have a level of public notoriety that made her especially visible. People were aware in Midlothian who Missy Bevers was. The night before her death, Missy had posted on Facebook and start quote, "Tomorrow begins week 1 endurance and it's weight day. If you've been using the same weight for the last 2 camps, it's time to go up. Hashtag let's make gains. 5 a.m. Creekside Church of Christ. We have cover under the front awning. 9 a.m. Midlothian Conference Center. We are moving to Midlothian Civic Center." So Missy had already shared her plans for her next day on social media before it happened. So it would have been very easy for anyone that was public access social media accounts to go on and know exactly where Missy Bevers would be and choosing a time where she would be most vulnerable. Missy's husband, Brandon, has expressed or shared that he expressed concern about Missy's early morning routines. He would advise her to scan locations with her high beams upon her arrival and to be aware of her surroundings. He also would remind Missy to keep her gun handy in case she needed it. However, on the morning of April 18th, 2016, her gun was not available to her to protect herself as she had left it in the car. There is some commentary on how odd or what people think of Missy Bevers carrying a gun with her is, but her friend Renee, who also would go to her fitness classes, says that a lot of personal trainers and fitness people in the area carry around firearms with them. And I think that might kind of just be generally true in the East Texas area.
I mean, it's Texas.
People have guns in their cars.
I'm not confused by that.
They display them in their truck windows. Like, we know that people have guns.
Yeah.
Now, the suspect broke several windows.
Windows!
The suspect had broken several windows at the church and semi-vandalized the premises for 30 minutes before Missy's arrival. The closest business to the church was a gun shop and club, SWIFA. I have no idea. All I know is it's abbreviated SWFA, and in the documentary they call it SWIFA.
SWIFA, hardly know it.
The gun shop's surveillance cameras captured a mystery vehicle circling the parking lot hours before Missy was murdered. This footage added another layer of mystery to the case, but has since been kind of dismissed.
Circling at, midnight? 1 a.m.?
It just says hours before. And so there's been speculation about this vehicle. It was a 2010 to 2012 Nissan Altima, according to authorities. When I saw the video footage, I could not make out that it was a Nissan Altima. But again, I'm no professional. There is some kind of concern and conversation about the potential for an accomplice, because there are multiple times where this Nissan Altima flashes its lights. So it circled the parking lot and at different times would flash its lights.
Yeah, the plot thickens.
Yeah, but there's just not a whole lot of information about it that's available. The crime scene at Creekside Church was only locked down for 7 hours, which is kind of a shockingly short amount of time given the potential for collecting crucial forensic evidence. The rain that morning could have helped in gathering shoe prints or other markers, but the very brief lockdown period limited the investigation. Brandon Bevers has shared that the police force lacked the technical resources to process the crime scene thoroughly. And the Midlothian Police Department has confirmed that. They've shared that that's true, and it's what ultimately led them to call Ellis County Sheriff's Department for support. Within 24 hours of the crime, the media had set up camp outside of the Bevers family home. Naturally, like the media does, they were hoping to catch some kind of glimpse into what Brandon Bevers and his family were experiencing after his wife's brutal slaying. And there were some people who found him to be having less than satisfactory reactions to his wife's death.
Oh, great. Cue judging the way that people grieve.
Brandon Bevers was called immediately after his wife was discovered. He was 8 hours away in Biloxi, Mississippi, on an annual fishing trip to Chandelier Island with 12 friends. This trip was a tradition for Brandon, and he had even posted an article on Facebook about the island on March 22nd. The article detailed the changing landscape of the island and the types of fish that could be found there, including redfish and speckled trout. And not that that matters to the case, I just thought it was interesting. On the same day he had posted it, Missy commented, telling her husband that he deserved a good fishing trip. When Brandon received the phone call, he recalls simply being told something's happened and Missy's no longer with us. Overcome with emotion, Brandon jumped into his car and began the long drive back.
By himself?
I think he had some of his friends with him.
Yes.
He was too scared to call and talk to his children, feeling too far away to offer them any real comfort. Brandon Bevers has said that he doesn't actually remember much from that day, including seeing his children for the first time after learning of Missy's death. He says that the weight of the news was just so overwhelming that all of that day is really a blur. So Stacey Newman, a former HLN producer on the docuseries Crimes, Lies, and Videotape, reported that many people found Brandon's demeanor strange. The spouse is traditionally the first suspect in such crimes, and Brandon's behavior was under intense scrutiny. Shortly after Missy's death, Brandon spoke to Alan Duke, editor-in-chief of LeadStories.com, and said that he didn't care if they ever caught the killer. His daughters didn't care. They just wanted to move on. Over the months that followed, Duke observed that Brandon's initial statements were born out of frustration and a desire to escape the media circus that had engulfed his family. Brandon clarified that while his children want justice, they also want to avoid the relentless media attention. Brandon was immediately compliant with authorities. Brandon went so far as to invite someone from the investigative team to live with him and his daughters to assess what kind of person he was. He was thoroughly investigated from the start, with authorities speaking to the captain of the Chandelier Island trip boat and the people he and his friends stayed with. They even read the contents of the search warrant to him before it went public so that they could gauge his reaction. The search warrant stated that Brandon and Missy were under financial distress. Brandon denies this claim and resents the implication that financial issues could have driven him to be involved in his wife's murder. As Brandon describes his own experience with Missy's ongoing investigation, he has found two things really frustrating. Well, more than that, but elements that he wishes would be removed from the public's perception of the situation. Mm-hmm. The first is the financial issues. Brandon has claimed that they didn't have any significant financial issues, and that what was found by the Midlothian Police Department confirms that, but I've yet to see where the Midlothian Police Department confirms that.
That's probably not a high priority for them.
Right.
To dispel something that they found to not be true. It doesn't do anything for the case.
Yeah.
He was 8 hours away, so it would be difficult to truly point the finger at him. Not to say that it hasn't been done, right? There are cases where going away on a trip is kind of the cover or the alibi for somebody to have somebody else come in and commit the crime, or to go away and then to sneak away from, but 8 hours.
And in this situation, the businesses corroborate his story. They corroborate the alibi. Brandon is also resentful of the idea that infidelity played a role in Missy's death. During the investigation, a reporter somehow obtained a sworn affidavit from the police stating that Missy Bevers was having an affair with another man. Many men were questioned about their relationship with Missy. Brandon speculated that his wife might have been murdered out of jealousy. He's quoted as saying, "She went from the typical mother of three physique to someone who looked like something out of a magazine." Missy's work as a fitness instructor, combined with her efforts to gain clients through social media, garnered a lot of attention, although some of it unwanted. Investigators did reveal that Missy had exchanged familiar, and this is in quotes, familiar and flirtatious messages with another man. These messages have never been released, and none of these potential suitors have ever been listed as suspects. A friend of Missy's did step forward and shared that Missy had shown her an odd message from someone on LinkedIn. Both women were unsure of who the man was, and Assistant Chief Kevin Johnson of the Midlothian Police Department has explained during a press conference that they had used a search warrant to examine the LinkedIn data, but they could not find the message that Missy's friend detailed for them. Supposedly, Missy Bevers received this odd message on LinkedIn 3 days before her death.
Oh.
And there's no real information to typify the contents of the message other than it was creepy and upsetting. But there's no record of this message being obtained through the search warrant that was executed by the Midlothian Police Department.
Did they search for the message still being there, or is it possible that the sender deleted it and they don't have access to that?
Also, Missy could have deleted it, right? Like, this message made me uncomfortable. I don't want to see it. I don't want to think about it. Delete.
That's kind of what I'm thinking, is if one or even both of them went to delete the message, would there be a record of the message?
I have no idea what kind of data or metadata stays behind after a message like that is deleted. There's just no official record of it.
Especially not on LinkedIn. And then that would be something that I would imagine they would have to get from LinkedIn's database or whatever.
4 days after the murder, police received a phone call that seemed to provide a significant lead. A shirt stained with blood had been taken to a dry cleaner. Someone had attempted to clean the shirt before bringing it in. That same day, a local news reporter called Brandon Bevers and informed him, "Brandon, something has come to light. Your dad dropped off a bloody shirt at the dry cleaners." This revelation created a media frenzy and focused attention on Randy Bevers, Brandon Bevers' father. Brandon and his father, Randy, spoke to the media in front of the Midlothian Police Department. Randy, however, was heavily criticized for his behavior during the press conference. Randy chuckled, he appeared nonchalant, and was very dismissive. And all of this behavior did not sit well with the public. Despite this initial shock and outcry...
Dismissive of what?
Like, dismissive of these questions about his potential involvement with Missy's death. And I think that people were really displeased or caught off guard by the way he was just really dismissive versus, "I did not harm my daughter-in-law, Missy Bevers."
Right. He was dismissive versus indignant.
Yeah, it was an issue of there was no media coaching. He had no idea or understanding of...
No, it sounds like this family as a whole, the Bevers, his parents, himself, his children, that they are not impressed with, interested in, or appreciative of the media covering them the way that they have. There must have been something very early on that put a bad taste in their mouth.
Well, it was. They immediately pointed to Brandon Bevers due to his reaction in those first 24 hours.
Yeah, and they ruined that. They ruined their relationship with the family. They ruined and this family they just don't seem like they are interested in being in the spotlight. I mean, it's not a situation that they asked for in any aspect. They are not asking for Missy to have been killed. They are not asking for having to have their privacy invaded by not only the police, which is probably far more welcome, than also being invaded by the media.
Right.
And then
they're getting it from all sides.
Well, put through whatever factory that then produces headlines that are clickbaity enough that get people invested in the case, but invested in the wrong things maybe. Focused on the wrong people.
Unrelated elements to actually finding Missy Bevers' murderer.
Yeah.
DNA testing did confirm that the blood on the shirt belonged to a dog, not a human. And that does track with the story that Randy Bevers shared, which was that his wife's ferocious chihuahua got into a fight with another dog. One of them started bleeding. He immediately picked up the chihuahua to separate them and took them to the vet. And that's what the blood was from. And that ended up proving true.
I can understand being dismissive if you know that it's not only going to come back as not a match to Missy, but it's going to come back as a match to a dog. or non-human blood. Yeah, it's like, this is ridiculous. And you see how fast the media machine works and the impact of it, how people respond to it.
And it's so compounded by social media and the ability to post and theorize and comment. The investigation into Missy Bevers' murder ended up drawing in several different law enforcement agencies, including the Midlothian Police Department, the Tarrant County Sheriff's Office, the Ellis County Sheriff's Office, the Texas Rangers, the FBI, and the ATF's K-9 unit. Their team of experts included medical examiners, trace evidence specialists, a forensic podiatrist, Dr. Nierenberg, and a physiologist. And they've all meticulously studied the crime scene. One of the elements they talk about a lot is the blood stains. Now, you and I know that blood stains are common markers at a crime scene, and they typically reveal crucial information, such as the position or location of the assailant, of the victim, of the weapon used, the point of the initial impact, the arcs of the swing, which is known as cast-off, and those things can even reveal the gender of the perpetrator. Dr. William Maroney, this medical examiner and forensic pathologist I discussed earlier, explained that both height and gender can be inferred from crime scene blood spatters. Missy's autopsy report confirmed that she had suffered puncture wounds, and while the medical examiner, like I told you earlier, does know what weapon was used, the department has chosen not to disclose that information to the public. A DNA sample was collected, but was insufficient and contained DNA from more than one individual. Another key piece of evidence in the case is the suspect's mannerisms and walking style. So getting back to something you've kind of heavily questioned and viewed as potential evidence, back to Dr. Michael Nierenberg, our forensic podiatrist, who was literally involved in the case and analyzed the suspect's gait.
Really out here shading the shit out of me.
The suspect's knee. So what Dr. Nierenberg explains is that the suspect's knee occasionally bent backward while walking, which is a condition known as hyperextension. This gait abnormality is rare in the general population and usually indicates either a physical abnormality or an injury that affects the hip, knee, or ankle. Dr. Maroney believes this gait likely belongs to a 30 to 40-year-old woman. Now I want to clarify. Dr. Maroney is the forensic pathologist and medical examiner. That is not the same as Dr. Michael Nierenberg, who is the podiatrist who actually worked on the case.
I'm aware of the difference. If I could start my life back over, I would be a forensic pathologist. I've read books on it, books by forensic pathologists.
So
I know.
You basically have your degree in it.
Would you stop?
They both discuss how that this injury becomes a lot more noticeable if we see a person turn, because that's when your leg becomes the most unstable if there's been an injury, that turning motion. The suspect's gait was asymmetric, likely due to an injury affecting the right leg or foot. The movement was also not fluid, suggesting the person either did not have SWAT experience or the musculature necessary to carry all of the tactical gear that he or she was wearing. Does that help you at all? Does that provide any other kind of insight that you might have been looking for into the perpetrator or suspected perpetrator's walk?
No.
You still think it's put on?
I'm just saying what I saw when I watched the video that you asked me to watch before we recorded.
I just want to clarify.
I saw a variety of gait with an untrained eye.
Right. Well, do you think...
I am not Look, you've pointed it out multiple times at this point. I am not an expert.
No, but you do have eyes. You are... You are a trained dancer.
Chill.
You understand movements. Your mother was a physical therapist, a doctor of physical therapy.
Indeed.
I know that you understand the human body and its movements.
But then my dad rolled.
Yes, he did.
So less training in watching people walk around. No?
No. No, but I love that for you. Okay, I just think I respect what you think, even though you're not a quote unquote professional. And so
It's a weird choice, honestly.
to respect you,
What I think.
I think that the idea that you present is kind of an important and alternative theory to what I believe the Midlothian Police Department and other investigative entities have assumed. I think if they are putting on this walk, they are a much more prepared and planned killer than they are receiving credit for right now.
I feel like they've shown that they are a prepared and planned killer in several ways. That's why I don't think that it would be too surprising. I mean, even most people who take a lot of precautions, they don't wear gloves the way that this person is. They don't wear tactical gear.
I don't know if the average person would know what gear they would even need to purchase in order to necessarily pull off this look, this attempt. I think one of the most gripping sentiments that's expressed in the docuseries is that both Brandon Bevers and Missy's close friend Renee talk about how they can't go anywhere without looking for that walk.
Yeah.
That they are haunted by this gate, looking for someone around the city of Midlothian who walks like the suspect. They both recount how they've had multiple instances of seeing a similar gate and having to make peace with the idea that that's probably not the killer, and stifling the kind of panic and anger and resentment they feel. It left me with a strong sense of admiration for the kind of restraint and patience they have to practice. Mm-hmm. Because I feel like my gut reaction would be like, murderer.
You killed.
Murderer.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are my wife's killer. You are my best friend's killer. And I don't think you can go around accusing people of murder.
No, not just like casually as they're doing their grocery shopping. At least, because I've heard a similar thing, especially in a smaller area or community where people, they have a hard time even just being in public, because when the case is open and they don't know who did it and it's been open and it doesn't seem like it's going to be solved, you kind of assume that the perpetrator is somebody who is operating with less caution because they've gotten away with it to this point. And so it's kind of a silver lining, I guess, that they have this gate to compare to, unless the gate is not accurate. But because there are people who talk about going out in public and going grocery shopping, and everyone that they walk past or have an exchange with, they are wondering, was it you? Right. Did you do it?
Well, and what makes it even more complicated still is that investigators believe that the suspect may not even walk like this anymore, especially if it was just a temporary injury. Again, Dr. Nurnberg has confirmed that he was provided the opportunity to analyze additional footage that has not been released to the public. And what he did share is that the footage he saw suggests that Missy heard something before she was murdered. Dr. Nurnberg was also sent video footage of several people walking to see if he could match the gait of the suspect to the person in each of those different video analyses. One person, Bobby Wayne Henry, could not be ruled out based on his gait. Henry is an interesting character. He has experience as a police officer, as a tactical officer, and this kind of combination of factors made him a person of interest in the investigation. When confronted, Bobby Wayne Henry admitted that he owned a helmet similar to the one worn by Missy's killer, and a tactical vest that no longer fit him. He also acknowledged that his gait was similar to the suspect's. Bobby also worked at and attended the same church as Missy Bevers and her family.
Is that where they got the footage from?
Where?
Of the different people's gait from the church?
That's not disclosed.
It would be, in my opinion, ideal to get it from the same cameras and angles and distance.
Especially if they think that the suspect had a familiarity with the church.
Right. Well, that was my other thought. But if they're doing that and they're pulling video footage from maybe the weeks prior to Missy's murder, when maybe this plan wasn't completely, it might not have even been formed or fully formed at that point if this was a planned killing, which I believe it was.
I also do believe that.
Then they may not have, I would say in the days leading up, they probably are trying to modify things in general for similar reasons, but maybe the weeks prior, a month prior, it would behoove the investigation to maybe look at Gate from those angles, at that distance, at that time period.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. I would also think that if that were the case, it would also help them end the height disparity conversation of not being able to determine the genuine height of the suspect.
True. Honestly, put us on the case.
Yeah, we would be I would not be good at that job.
We are untrained. We are inexperienced. And
no virtually fucking nothing.
So we'll stick to the armchair detective.
I think so. Bobby Wayne Henry even volunteered and worked at Missy's memorial service. When further questioned, Bobby stated that he woke up at 3 a.m. on the morning of Missy's murder to feed his baby while his wife got ready for work. He claimed he was at home during the time of the murder. However, a passerby had noticed a dark SUV, a Honda CR-V to be exact, leaving Creekside Church at 4:30 a.m., and the police search warrant noted that Bobby drove a dark brown 2014 Honda CR-V. On December 14th, 2016, police searched Bobby Wayne Henry's home. Investigators found several items of interest, including a pair of black men's work boots, handcuffs in a leather holster, a hammer and flathead screwdriver. Honestly, that's not too interesting because, like you said, everyone has a hammer. Gloves.
It would be more interesting if they didn't find a hammer.
Right. An ASP baton, a black tactical belt, binoculars, a black knee brace, 2 pairs of men's pants, a DVD camera.
Oh, okay. Wait. Let's run this back. Bobby, male. Mm-hmm. And they noted that they found 2 pairs of men's pants.
That's what the official document says, but I have to assume that it's lacking detail. Like maybe 2 pairs of like black tactical pants.
Yeah, unless they're just expecting him to Winnie the Pooh everywhere.
Just bottom half out and swinging.
It's not swinging.
Oh, he's just smooth down there.
Oh, God.
He's Ken. Legal documents in his Honda CR-V. Despite these items of interest, none of them could be directly linked to Missy's murder. Based on unrelated contents found in his home, and they don't disclose what it is, Bobby Wayne Henry was arrested. However, by April 2019, the Midlothian Police Department announced that they were no longer considering Bobby Wayne Henry a suspect.
Did they have any proposed motive for him?
Other than the connection of them going to church together, not really. And there's information that they may have not disclosed.
Yeah.
Bobby Wayne Henry declines interviews for obvious reasons, but when he is approached, he does typically offer a statement that expresses how he has cooperated with the investigation. And by all accounts, that's true. Bobby Wayne Henry has never made it difficult for investigative forces to search him or any of his belongings or things.
Yeah, I don't know that does a whole lot for me. I don't know that it's not that I'm saying that it's him.
Right.
He doesn't really strike me. But as somebody who has police experience, you said that he has experience as a police officer.
I thought you were meaning that you had police experience.
Not yet. Not today.
Officer Jones.
Jesus. As somebody who has experience, as Bobby, who has experience as a police officer, I think that you would be open to letting the police work. You would be willing to cooperate because you would know what they were doing. Like, you would almost have an insider's idea about how things were going to go. So you're going to...
Also quick to eliminate yourself if you've done your work correctly.
Right.
I had nothing to hide. I was honest. I cooperated.
Yeah, that's key.
I bred goodwill between me and the police force. Retired homicide detective John Bueller suggests that the Midlothian Police Department might have a reasonably viable suspect, but they still lack sufficient evidence to proceed with the arrest, which I told you earlier. Every year, the Midlothian Police Department holds an annual press conference to assure the public that the investigation remains active and is still being pursued. Additionally, the police department still spends 1 to 2 days per month working on the case in a dedicated conference room.
Did they ever have a behavioral analysis done on a potential suspect? Because usually they have something that comes out that says this person likely is married, may have children, probably has children. They probably lost a lot of weight.
If they did, it's never been shared.
Because that's really important. If you're going to go and make, in my opinion, that's very important. If you're going to make it a point to make sure that the public knows that you are still actively working to solve this case, then give the public some information that they could work with by way of a behavioral analysis profile. But it's not going to be as valuable this many years later.
I don't even know if they had enough information to create this profile. I'm not sure what it would have said, but if they do have one, it's never been shared.
Well, they have these hallmarks of somebody who commits a crime like this. This is very likely some of the behavioral changes that you can expect to see somebody exhibit in these circumstances. And then you can give this, even if it's a very comprehensive list, it gives people something to kind of pay attention to, or it can inform them about behavioral changes that they've seen in somebody that they maybe didn't know what to attribute it to. But they didn't do it, so...
Yeah, if they did, it's not shared. While Brandon Bevers is not really a suspect or a person of interest anymore in this case, Brandon Bevers has never been officially given the free and clear from the Midlothian Police Department. However, the Midlothian PD has stated that no member of Missy's family is the focus of their investigation. With all of this being said, Brandon Bevers still remains under public scrutiny. Brandon often reflects on his life with Missy, describing it as a dream, and sometimes feeling it was too good to be true. The family holds tightly to their memories of Missy. Brandon shares that their youngest daughter, Sarah, is a firecracker, much like Missy, and that Allison, the middle child, embodies Missy's thoughtful and compassionate side, while the eldest, Hannah, happens to carry both of those traits. Brandon now only speaks to the media to address the murderer directly, urging them to face their family and confront the pain they've caused. The Midlothian community remains vigilant, and the search for justice continues. Missy Bevers is not remembered as just a victim of a brutal crime, but as a beloved mother, wife, and friend who left an indelible mark on all those who knew her. Throughout Midlothian, reminders of Missy's unsolved murderer are ever present. Along the train tracks, a red billboard displays a photo of Missy in a purple tank top, her hair flowing just past her shoulders. Next to her image is a grainy picture of her killer in tactical gear, accompanied by the haunting question in bold yellow letters: who killed Missy Bevers? Is that the billboard that you see? Mm-hmm. The tragic murder of Missy Bevers has generated numerous theories and speculations, each attempting to piece together the puzzle of who killed the beloved fitness instructor and why. Initially, investigators considered the possibility that the crime might have been a burglary gone wrong. However, several critical details have swayed them to believe of more of the perception that you and I have, that it was a planned murder. One detail that has continued to intrigue investigators and web sleuth alike are the suspect's behavior in the surveillance footage. The killer appeared to use a wall at one point for steadiness, raising questions about their physical condition, kind of going back to your suggestion of like a cartoon bank robber. Web sleuths have speculated extensively about potential suspects, with some unable to shake the idea that Randy Bevers, Missy's father-in-law, might have been involved. Randy has a noticeable scar on his right leg and an outward pronation on his right leg and foot, which aligns with the suspect's distinctive gait captured on video.
But what would that motive have been?
Despite these suspicions, there is no concrete evidence linking Randy to the crime. When we talk about there is no motive mentioned about Randy Bevers, and the best I can figure out is that Missy Bevers had an affair in 2014.
Is that confirmed?
Give me just a second. Another theory that has gained traction involves one of Missy's Camp Gladiator co-workers and his wife. At the time of Missy's murder, the co-worker's wife was described as short, stocky, and had a broken foot. This has led some to speculate that jealousy might have been a motive, especially considering the physical similarity to the suspect's estimated height and gait. There is a lot of speculation about this couple being responsible for Missy's death on Reddit. I don't feel comfortable talking about their identity or details of that speculation, but I just wanted to make our listeners aware that that is one theory that kind of floats in the ether.
Okay.
Adding another layer of complexity to the case, Brandon Bevers has confirmed that Missy had an affair in 2014, but that they were working through it. And I want to correct myself because Brandon Bevers confirmed that there was an affair in 2014 and that they were working through it, not necessarily that it was Missy's affair. This revelation opened up new avenues for speculation. Also, with that being said, there are so many different sources that kind of casually refer to this affair, and it's always stated as Missy's affair. And so it's hard for me to necessarily note if it's confirmed to be Missy's affair or if it was just an affair in general. This revelation opened up new avenues for speculation, including the possibility of a crime of passion or jealousy. However, Brandon has expressed frustration with the true crime community's fascination and analysis of the case, feeling that some treat it more like a Lifetime movie rather than a real-life tragedy that affects his family.
I can see that, especially with her having a semi-public figure and notwithstanding that we too are talking about it.
Absolutely.
But I see that you have approached it in a way that does not do that.
And there are no value judgments on Brandon Bevers or Missy Bevers or their family, other than I think that they were your typical American family, working through whatever they needed to work through. At one point in time, Brandon worked cooperatively with a true crime podcast. This podcast had published more than 100 episodes related to Missy Bevers' case. At one point in time, the podcast aired an interview with a guest that discussed their beliefs about Missy's romantic life, and allegedly, Brandon found it to be offensive and in poor taste. The true crime podcast in question has acknowledged Brandon's feelings and have heard that he felt a sense of betrayal. It's worth noting that this particular podcast has always advocated for Brandon's innocence, and they did provide a disclaimer at the top of their episode that the content should be taken for what it was versus as being fact or truth.
Yeah, a lot of speculation and probably rumors and yeah.
All of these alternative theories highlight the complexity and the depth of this investigation. It reflects the desperate search for answers. If you have any information that could help solve this case, please contact Crime Stoppers of Ellis County at 972-937-7297. Your tip could be the key to unlocking this mystery and bringing justice to Missy and her family. There is a total of $151,000 in reward money for actionable tips that lead to the unmasking of Missy Bevers' murderer.
Unmasking and arrest, or just unmasking?
I think the revelation of, well, I assume we would want it to end in an arrest.
I guess you have to assume that like a conviction would be equivalent to an unmasking.
Right.
You in these open cases, man. You're killing me.
You know, they originated as a desire to do Texas cases. I think there's something so fascinating to me about open cases. And after I hear about them and read about them, and in this case, research them, I'm also desperate for closure.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. I love that you're bringing awareness to these cases because they are solvable. And we have covered cases before that time and the right set of eyes or the right communication coming out or those things do make the difference. They do lead to the closing of the cases, but...
Sherry Rasmussen.
Yeah, but it is especially difficult to hear cases that feel solvable, but that haven't been solved.
You know, one of the biggest frustration points for me in all of this research is that the Midlothian Police Department, and I'm going to say this allegedly, that they didn't have the resources necessary to conduct the investigation to its fullest extent.
It sounds like they didn't have the resources to adequately and thoroughly process the crime scene.
Exactly.
7 hours and the church was open for business seems kind of like you said before, an opportunity for a lot of potential evidence to be washed away. In some senses, literally, with the weather being what it was at the time.
A lot of the speculation, and I didn't get into every alternative theory because it didn't feel prudent.
Yeah.
But a lot of speculation is that the murderer exited from the same place that he or she entered from and then receded into the woods behind the church. So I know I explained to you at the beginning, there was kind of this sparsely populated wooded area. Mm-hmm. And that's where it's believed that he disappeared to. But one of the things that critics have kind of focused on is that based on the weather, why were there no mud tracks? Why were there no water tracks? Why were those things not findable at the crime scene? If he had or she had navigated in from the woods, were they carrying the shoes they wore with them? To your credit, some postulate that they were shoes that were the wrong size. Intentionally, about pretending and acting and setting a scene that was disingenuous.
Okay.
And
I did not follow because I never talked about
shoes
and shoe size.
Well, and they posit that it was intentional. They wore shoes bigger than what they should have to alter their gait, to make things look different. And there are so many variables to this case that I don't know how the Midlothian Police Department successfully excludes any person or any theory, because so much of it is there's not enough information.
They could obviously exclude some people from, based on the video footage. I mean, if you're 4'11" or below, or if you are 6 foot, it wasn't you, based on the footage. But there's a large amount of the population that does fall between 5'2" and 5'8".
Mm-hmm. That 5'8" figure has a 1.53 inch margin of error tacked to it.
Okay, 5'9.5".
Exactly. And where does it end? Where does it stop? Where does someone say, oh, this suspect is too short or too tall? Because if one number is 5'2" to 5'7", another one is 5'8", then we still have the margin of error for that number.
I think you just take a group of people into the church at 3:50 in the morning and you have them walk around in that same area.
You take the whole population of Midlothian. You buy everyone a tactical gear set.
No.
You make everyone dress up.
No, just for
You
height.
make everyone break into the church.
Oh my gosh.
You make them go through the process.
Break in is crazy.
You say, emulate this exact video. It is your responsibility to memorize the movements. That's how you find the killer.
Alternatively, you don't do that.
That would be the real cartoon buffoonery.
Yeah. Okay. Well, as difficult as it is, I do appreciate you telling this story. And I hope that soon this case is solved.
I do too. For those of you, again, who think you might know some information that would be key to solving Missy Bevers' case.
Even if you don't think that it's important, it could
Any
very
detail.
well be. Yeah.
Please reach out again to Crime Stoppers of Ellis County. Their number is 972-937-7297.
A complete list of sources and any links can be found in the show notes.
And that's all we've got for this episode. If you enjoyed listening and want to hear more, please subscribe and drop us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcast or wherever you're listening.
Recommend us to a friend and make sure you're following us at End of Crime Pod on Instagram.
Like us on Facebook at Until the End of Crime and join our discussion group.
Our email address is endofcrimepod@gmail.com. So send us an email with questions, requests, or episode suggestions.
Thank you for listening.
Until the next crime.